Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video is going to really be more focused to my younger audience. I've been reviewing my telemetry data on my viewership, and I am very happy to report that my subscriptions are now at an all-time high, and I've only been doing this for about 6 months. I'm very happy of the trajectory. I've even been lifetime banned by Google, so that's definitely a badge of honor indicating that I must have truthful content, because I can assure you they have lots of poppycock and patently false content that exists over at YouTube. So there is patently false content that they do not delete, and I'm thinking that they don't delete it on purpose because they like false content over there. Anyway, there's a lot more young viewers that are watching my show now. Young viewers meaning over age 18. You know, my content's apparently not appropriate for under 18. But my group of 18 to 24-year-olds is now 10% of my total viewership. This is wonderful news. This is great. My main group, of course, are folks over 65 years old. That's about 38% of my viewers. The next biggest group is the age 46 to 55. That's a really significant block. That's probably 26%. And then the other groups in their 30s and 40s, as you collect more money in savings, I get more traffic and more viewership and more subscriptions. So that makes sense because my topic is in my background is definitely in finance, accounting, money laundering, concealment of criminal activities, calling it private banking, as if private banking was some kind of, Our Lady of Lourdes to cleanse away all of your felonious crimes through the covenant of baptism, or the holy water. The holy waters of Lourdes could somehow forgive all of your political murder, assassination, fraudulent schemes, where you bayoneted FTX cryptocurrency on November 11th, 2022, where you bayoneted Abigail Folger, age 25, a young future banker, a future private banker, torpedoed at age 25 by the M7 bayonet in Beverly Hills, where she didn't live. She did not live in Beverly Hills. And she was murdered in Benedict Canyon, where she didn't live, by the M7. Torpedoed her on August 9th, 1969, right? That murdered Lino LaBianca with this weapon at age 44. Military policeman, 6 foot tall, 235 pounds, stabbed 10 times in the chest with this weapon, and he had 6 loaded pistols in that home. That meant that somebody did a stun gun or aerosol spray and knocked him out, just like they knocked out the 3 dogs at Cielo Drive and the 19-year-old pool boy, William Garrickson, who was unharmed and not bayoneted. That's professional. That's why you know that had nothing to do with any Manson family. It had to do with professional NATO-trained soldiers with M16 rifles attached to an M7 bayonet with a perimeter team and probably night vision. And showers in the 6 homes just below the hillside, 30 seconds away. So it's all staged. It's all planned. Actually a fairly easy exercise if you do it with 12 to 16 soldiers. It's a piece of cake. Plus surveillance people. Anyway, I'm always on guard for Trojan horses. Now, Ron DeSantis being the most obvious one now. I mean, Ron DeSantis is the governor of the state of Florida. Florida is a lot like the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, in my opinion, where they're trying to attract the resistance to the movement. Back in the 60s, the resistance was the Vietnam War. So how do you attract all the young people that are going to be conscripted into the United States Army and the Navy and the Air Force? Well, you do it with free concerts, you do it with free drugs, you do it with free birth control, free medical health in the city of San Francisco, right? And throughout the whole greater Bay Area. There were 13 other free medical clinics in the San Francisco Bay Area. We only talk about Haight-Ashbury. I'm sure this was going on in Los Angeles and in Manhattan, New York, because at Columbia University, there was resistance. That's a spook school, right? And all the schools out here in California are spook schools, and all the schools back in New York, Fordham University, Columbia University, Harvard, MIT, Yale, Princeton, just go down the list. They all have, through the invisible hand of grant funding and endowment funds, essentially they're all clandestine private banking facilities to facilitate whatever the bankers want. And the bankers want pacification and control, and they want chaos, and they want confusion, and they want psychological warfare foisted upon the sheep that they're herding until they're ready to harvest those sheep. That's what it's all about. That's what 5G is. That's what the mesh is. That's what a smart grid is. That's what our banking system is. And that's what cryptocurrency perhaps might have been. I believe we will have some form of a cryptocurrency. It's just not going to be, what you think. It's going to be a centralized bank digital currency. The banks are going to have the digital currency, the only one that's going to be endorsed. And I don't know what Peter Schiff has to say about that, but I sort of kind of don't care. Okay, Peter Schiff was born on March 23rd, 1963, and he went to the he went to the Haas School of Business at University of California, Berkeley. It's actually the Walter A. Haas School of Business. I'm assuming that Peter Schiff got his master's degree from the Haas School of Business in Berkeley. It's been rebranded, people. I don't know if Peter knows this. They've trotted out the new world order over there. Now it's called BerkeleyHaas. It's BerkeleyHaas. And they even have a motto. I don't think this was the motto that was in place when Peter Schiff was a graduate of the Haas School of Business. Their new motto is "New Thinking for the New Economy." Well, that's a load of poppycock, because there has never been any new thinking about centralized bank authority. There's nothing new to see here, people. And that's the only thing that my only beef with Peter Schiff is that I know he was indoctrinated by CIA school, but the thing is that he's been a gold bug, and I would appreciate that because I appreciate physical delivery of assets. And I also agree with that people should be able to decide their own valuation of a currency. You shouldn't have to watch television to know what gold is worth. You can just decide amongst yourself. The same as on Craigslist. Isn't it amazing that you can sell art and bicycles and motorcycles and cars and coffee tables, no two of which are homogeneously identical? They all have nicks and bumps and scratches in them, and yet people can conduct business without a market maker at Craigslist. I've had these conversations with Wall Street traders. It usually goes nowhere because, of course, they're in total denial. They just want their big fat commission and their bonuses, and they're not going to admit that people could use silver coin and gold bullion and labor and their skills to do business with other people in a society. Of course you can. It comes down to convenience. What is really convenient and what is inconvenient? But what I wanted to, I want to quote Peter Schiff on something that I don't know. It's controversial, and I'm going to post a link below where it's a very intelligent conversation that Peter Schiff has regarding the cryptocurrency sector of our money system economy. And there was a Twitter feed, I guess, a tweet is what you call it. I'm not on Twitter, so I don't really follow tweets, but Peter Schiff was commenting on the November 11th, 2022 filing of for Chapter 11 reorganization paperwork in federal court in the District of Delaware, which, of course, bayonets FTX, because if you're a financial services company, a bank, a hedge fund, a mutual fund, an investment fund, and you file Chapter 11 paperwork, you're done. You're going to go very quickly to Chapter 13. You go 11 to 13 for LLCs or corporations. They use the federal law 11 and 13 to wind down and close out the checking account and pay lawyers a bunch of money that they probably don't deserve. Anyway, the bayonet is what's used to torpedo things. That's what they used to torpedo FTX on November 11th. That's what they used to torpedo Abigail Folger, age 25, a Harvard alum and a Harvard Radcliffe alum. and she was murdered 28 times with a bayonet, which I'm going to call a banker's bayonet, held by a professionally Army soldier trained team of soldiers, three-person team, and they killed her with a bayonet. Anyway, with respect to the meltdown of FTX, just a couple weeks ago, the CNBC was throwing out questions like, is this going to be a crypto ice age? So Peter Schiff, in response to the new narrative that perhaps FTX is going to lead to an ice age for cryptocurrency, this is what's attributed to Peter Schiff. In a more concise explanation, Peter Schiff stated that this was not even the crypto ice age, which eventually came to an end after millions of years, but rather a cryptocurrency industry extinction. In his tweet, Peter Schiff wrote, quote, "This is also not a crypto ice age, comma, as even that came to an end after a couple of million years, period. This is crypto extinction," end quote. All right. I don't know if that comment is going to be proven correct or not. I mean, I'm a lot like Peter Schiff in that I too was a gold bug, and it's like being a cuckoo clock, right? Is that you're right twice a day. Peter Schiff is always right twice a day. So am I. I'm always right twice a day with my bombastic opinions. I am right twice a day. But 95% of the time, maybe we're wrong, right? And I thought this whole house of cards monetary system called the United States dollar was going to implode big time when Ronald Reagan was president, a man I personally met and admired, even though he was a professional actor, people. That's why he was so good on television, because he knew how to hit his teleprompter lines on cue to a T. He had elocution lessons. He was a successful Hollywood actor. He was the president of the Actors Guild, which is a cult, the Screen Actors Guild. Ronald Reagan was twice president for about 4 years total. And he knew everybody in Hollywood. And I mean, he knew everybody in Hollywood. So it's comical when you see Ronald Reagan, on television shows with Johnny Carson or with Dean Martin on the, those Dean Martin roasts, the Friars Club formatted roasts. I've been to the Friars Club in Century City, so I have a little feel for what that's all about. I met Milton Berle at the Friars Club, which I guess he was a part owner of. I didn't know that. I just thought he was there having lunch, but I guess he's there used to be there all the time. So the thing is that cuckoo clocks are right twice a time. So I've been wrong for 37 years. I thought the dollar was going to completely implode, back in the 1980s, and I've been wrong for 37 years. And Peter Schiff's been consistently wrong about the price of gold being, it's being suppressed. I agree, the price of gold should be much higher than I guess it is. When you use fiat currency to value it, it should be like $1 trillion more than what it's quoted at per ounce. I just wish I had a bunch of those gold bricks. I think they're a kilo. A kilo of gold is worth like $65,000. When you look at the per ounce price, I think it's $1,750 an ounce. So a 1 kilo brick would be worth about $66,000. Hey, I pay $80,000 for the brick just to have it. I'll pay extra. See, that's the whole point. You don't need market makers on Wall Street to tell you what you're willing to pay for a stock or a bond or a gold coin or a silver coin or a gold brick. You don't need some knucklehead who's making $5 to $10 million a year putting lipstick on pigs and telling you what it's worth. You don't need that. Believe me, if you can use Craigslist to buy and sell your car or a motorcycle or a bicycle or bicycle parts, or you could buy and sell coffee tables on Craigslist, which are not homogeneous. They all are unique and different. They have scratches and dings and dents. And people transact business all day long without a professional market maker, without a commissioned salesperson. People can go on Craigslist for no what they call yield spread premium, no yield spread premium, no fake pricing, no market maker, no market stability whatsoever, and people can do business on Craigslist. And if people can do business on Craigslist, People can buy and sell gold coins and stocks and bonds and debentures privately onto their own. But you can't. It's illegal. There's federal law against that. Why is that? That's to protect the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is the banker. It's the central bankers. They're destroying and wrecking the currencies of the whole world so that we go to a centralized digital obedience social credit score, participation score. They're in charge of that. That's all got to come to an end, people. So if Peter Schiff tells you to have some gold and silver, I'm going to agree with Peter Schiff on that. Absolutely, you should do that. You should have other things too that maybe have a higher utility value that could be helpful in case of anarchy or in case of NATO forces coming to your town to enforce World Bank authority. I can envision that happening. I don't know if Peter Schiff has a comment on that. You generally can't talk about that, out loud in public, right? It's like yelling fire in a theater, right? I'm just telling you, listen to everybody, take it in. But you young people have a big disadvantage. You've been indoctrinated in these stupid schools. And number two is that you're young and you lack experience. So you really should plug into a show like mine or listen to Peter Schiff somewhat. You have to realize that you've got to be somewhat skeptical with me. You got to be skeptical with Peter Schiff too, because we were indoctrinated. Peter Schiff came from Polish Jewish immigrants. That puts Peter Schiff in the same category as Roman Polanski, Jerzy Kaczynski, Wojtek Frykowski. All three of those worked for the CIA in Manhattan, New York, and were associated with Columbia University, which is a school that's affiliated with the managing partner of Sequoia Capital, who created and financed FTX. Columbia University is in that equation, right? And so's the Bronx, Jewish people from the Bronx. And I'll be as specific as I can be. Jerome Kohlberg, the founder of KKR, he came from New Rochelle, New York, which is the Bronx. The managing director for many years of Sequoia Capital was Doug Leone. Now, he's Italian, and we don't have any information on his parents, so I don't know if he's Jewish or not, but he came from the Bronx. He came from Mount Vernon, which is the Bronx. Don Valentine, he attended Fordham University, a Roman Catholic Jesuit university, and he was born and raised in the Bronx. He has been known as the godfather of Silicon Valley. Well, that's kind of a silly title. Electronics and military contracts existed in Silicon Valley, aka Santa Clara Jesuit University, when they used to have orchards where the Jesuits used to go out and work in the orchards. And they actually grew their own grapes for their, wine, right? That was part of the Catholic tradition, the body and blood of Jesus, the society of Jesus. Got to drink the wine, right? Well, every one of those Father Junipero Serra installations, military installations, which is what they are, they all had vineyards. They just weren't growing avocados. They were growing grapes to make wine with, too, and other crops. Don Valentine came out of the Bronx. Sandy Weil, who was the chief executive officer, chairman of the board of Citigroup, he came out of Brooklyn, right? And who else came out of Brooklyn, New York? Louis Jolion West, MK Ultra medical doctor, psychiatrist. Alan Dershowitz, the television talking head, lecturer at Harvard Law School, graduate of the Yale Law School. His client was Jeffrey Epstein. Remember Jeffrey Epstein? Human trafficking, underage girls. Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein, inseparable. They both came out of Brooklyn, New York. They both did business together. They both have a business relationship. They both came out of Brooklyn. They both must be associated with CIA. Yale's associated with CIA. Peter Folger went there. He's involved with State Department clearances to import coffee beans, to sell his company to Procter & Gamble. You got to have State Department clearances. He married a State Department woman, Ines Mejia. Her parents belonged to the State Department for El Salvador. Ambassadors to El Salvador. lived in Piedmont, where Robert McNamara went to school, grew up and went to school at Berkeley, and then Harvard MBA, and then the president of the World Bank, Robert McNamara, accountant at Price Waterhouse. I don't think he got a CPA license. He was too busy working for the CIA. Anyway, Jeffrey Epstein, Alan Dershowitz, Louis Jolion West, Sandy Weil all came out of Brooklyn. The Bronx, we had Mark Lane, whose real name is Levin, and he did all those fake documentaries on the John Kennedy murder, and then he did fake discussions regarding Jonestown, was Jim Jones's personal lawyer and money laundering mule, and got flown out of Jonestown during the murders to end up in Paris, France, and probably Geneva, Switzerland, which is headquarters of Lake Lemond and the WHO, World Health Organization. Mark Lane, aka Levin, Mark Levin. Albert Laverne, a Jewish gentleman who also taught anthropology courses at Fordham University, which is where Don Valentine went. And Don Valentine came out of there, and he founded Sequoia Capital in 1972. And he worked for National Semiconductor and Fairchild and Raytheon Missile Guidance Systems. And he, with no banking experience, no banking credential, became the godfather of private banking for Silicon Valley because he's associated with bringing Apple Computer to life and bringing Cisco Systems to life and bringing LSI Logic to life, and associated with Electric Arts, simulation to restructure the brains of children to life, bringing Google to life, bringing YouTube to life, bringing Zoom to life. That's Don Valentine. And his cohort, younger gentleman, Doug Leon, who's from the Bronx, Mount Vernon, the Bronx, in close proximity to the, what was it called? The little military academy, Catholic military academy that Don Valentine attended before he went off to become elite money laundering private banker. Money laundering means concealed banking. Money laundering is the concealment of the sources and use of money. So by definition, private banking is money laundering. Money laundering is the concealment of the sources and use of money. Now, are the sources and uses illegal? I don't know. It's a secret, right? It could be. If you murdered somebody and you had to pay off the killer, would that be illegal money laundering? Yes, it would. Would donating money to the San Francisco Symphony, would that be illegal? No, that wouldn't be illegal. Would that be money laundering? Yes, it would be, if it's concealed. I mean, in theory, money laundering is having to do with an illegal act, like murder, like fraud, like torpedoing FTX. If there's anything to do with concealment involving money and an event where people are harmed, I think full disclosure is the only way you can tell the truth. There is no way that Sequoia Capital is going to open its books to the general public. No way. Impossible. They're an international money laundering private bank facility. They are unauditable. And you know what? Every one of the major banks in Manhattan and in our country, they're all unaudited too. Do they have audits? Yes. Does the audit, is it comprehensive? No, it's not. There's no adult supervision for banks. Banks are not regulated. They are not supervised. They're a self-supervising private men's club. That's what they are. The school I was referring to is St. Michael's Academy. It's in Mount Vernon, in close proximity where Doug Leon came from. And that is where Don Valentine attended, St. Michael's Academy, which is the Bronx. And before it, he went on to Fordham University. Anyway, I'm just telling you, it's more than a coincidence that Jerome Kohlberg, the founder of KKR, came out of the Bronx, and that Don Valentine, the founder of Sequoia Capital, came out of the Bronx, and they both end up at 2800 Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, across the street from the Stanford 4,000-acre campus facility. It's a little setback. It's not exactly right across the street, but it's close. It's walking distance. You could walk to the Stanford campus. And it's also walking distance to the Sacred Heart Academy convent to indoctrinate the children of the people who live in these zip codes. These zip codes for Woodside, Portola Valley, Atherton, Menlo Park, Los Altos Hills. I'm skipping over some things here, but Redwood City, Belmont. You can send your children to the Sacred Heart Academy. That's where Abigail Folger's mother attended the Sacred Heart Academy on Valparaiso in Menlo Park, Atherton, whatever they want to call it. It's always confusing. It's Menlo Park, but they like to call it Atherton. It's off of El Camino Real, the King's Highway. They call it that for a reason. And anyway, this is where Aaron Valente went missing at age 33. I also think it's ironic, because I'm a man who likes to look at connections, that Peter Schiff, when he graduated from the Haas Business School and went on to work at a number of, like Shearson Lehman, which is the same pathway that Jamie Dimon was on, the same pathway that Sandy Sanford Weil, the chairman of the board of Citigroup, he was associated with American Express and Shearson Lehman. And that's where Peter Schiff worked, and that's where Jamie Dimon worked, who's the big shot manager of Chase Manhattan, JP Morgan, whatever they call themselves. So you have to always keep on guard. This is where you have to swim with the sharks. There's just no way to get out of learning about how the concealment of the banking system works. But essentially, it's a very small cult. It's a cult. It's a small group of people. And it's structured identically to the Hollywood cult that Ronald Reagan was a part of with the Screen Actors Guild. The exact moving parts of Hollywood, connections between the studio executives, the directors, the producers, the actors, the set designers, the provisional housing where everybody lives in Benedict Canyon or Malibu Gated Colony or in West Hills or Calabasas, those little enclaves, which are all security camera, hedgerows, no sidewalks, whether it's Laurel Canyon, whether it's Coldwater Canyon, or Benedict Canyon, Bel Air Road, whether it's Pacific Palisades. It's not an accident that this is where Charlie Manson was put up for housing in all these places, because he was working for bank clandestine services. Charlie Manson is an example of money laundering. He has no bank account. He has no driver's license. He owns no automobile, right? He has no management training. He didn't attend Stanford or Harvard or University of California Haas Business School. He didn't do that. And yet he's a cult family, and he's the leader of a cult family, and he's more famous than Don Valentine is. He's more famous than Doug Leone is. He's more famous than Jerome Kohlberg is of KKR, who founded KKR. He's more famous than Peter Schiff is, who's on CNBC all the time. He's more famous than John Kennedy was. He's more famous than Robert Kennedy. He's more famous than Jim Jones in Jonestown. He's more famous than William Cowley, who's associated with 504 dead Vietnamese women and children killed by the M7 bayonet. And Charlie Manson is attributed with murders of people that were killed by an M7 military bayonet, and he wasn't in the military. And he didn't own a bayonet. So he doesn't have a car, doesn't have a bank account, doesn't have a bayonet. I don't know how he does it. He's the Wizard of Oz. He's the Wizard of Oz of terrorism. Anyway, it's a made-up story. That's why it all makes sense. It makes sense if you believe in Alice in Wonderland. There's a little section there where Alice is walking down the pathway, and the pathway forks, goes left and right, and she looks up at the tree, and there's a Cheshire Cat, and she asks the Cheshire Cat, "Which way do I go?" And the Cheshire Cat responds with, "Well, where did you want to end up?" And then Alice answers, "I don't know." And then the Cheshire Cat answers her, retorts, "Then it doesn't matter." See, young people out there, it's very important to be target focused, and you can only be target focused if you have an objective. So you need to be goal oriented, have a clear objective, then you can be target focused to get to achieve your goal. you're going to make mistakes along the way. So you need plan A, plan B, plan C. You'll learn that as you get older. And you know, the probability of your success gets closer and closer to 100% the more organized and prepared you are, and the more well coached you are. Because that's what I'm trying to tell you is these heads of these hedge funds and these private equity funds and these major banks who are all engaged in concealment of the sources and uses of money laundering, they've all been well indoctrinated at all those fancy schools. They've been indoctrinated into the oath of obedience, secrecy, and world mission. Those are the three oaths. Obedience, number one, secrecy, number two, and world mission, number three. That's what all these people believe in. That's a cult. When you have oaths like that, secret oaths, you're in a cult. If you wear a face diaper, you're in a cult. If you practice social distancing, you're in a cult. Because you believe things that are not proven by science. That's obedience. You're an obedience cult. Just like Oliver Stone, not his real name, Oliver Silverstein. Oliver Silverstein, the same name that Larry Silverstein, you know, who's involved with the 9/11 leasehold of the Twin Towers and other properties on the World Trade Center. Do you know the Twin Towers were 70% vacant? I mean, they were going to blow up vacant buildings. I mean, the normal casualties on a day like that, if they were 95% occupied, you'd have 50,000 people killed. But it's only 2,900 people killed. See, so that's the CIA looking out for you. They're only going to kill like the same number of people that they murdered at Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor and 9/11, very similar amounts of casualties, which is very low. Very low. Now, there's casualties that came later because those buildings were filled up with matriculite, asbestos, poison that was mined in Libby, Montana. It's another little thing I knew that I learned about. Libby, Montana, look it up. W.R. Grace, their biggest single transaction was in the construction of the World Trade Center, all 12 buildings. I think there's at least 12 buildings on that property. And they sold asbestos mined in Libby, Montana. I raced my bicycles past that. I wish they had known that. Maybe I would have held my breath. It's not really possible. It's on a pretty big mountain. Anyway, I could tell you stories for days. I got so much material. I got like 10,000 hours of material that I haven't delivered yet. But the thing is that they took toxic asbestos, where they killed half the town of Libby, Montana, died from when people shook out their Levi's when they got home and the wife put the clothes in the washer dryer. The children and the wife inhaled all that stuff, and then they, filled their lungs up with water, which is what happens when you get asbestos in your lungs. So you don't want to be close to that. So the people of Manhattan were lied to. They were told it was safe. You should have left Manhattan immediately and don't go back for 10 years. But the people were lied to, and the fire department's out there with hoses at 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning trying to hose off all the dust, the asbestos dust that was in the windowsills and the sidewalks. It would take 10 years to get that stuff out of there. Anyway, so people, when the dust gets kicked up with the wind, people inhale that stuff, just like they maybe inhale the chemtrails overhead. I don't know. The point is that we're in a war, and John Kennedy told us that back on April 27th, 1961. He said, we are opposed by a monolithic force that uses covert means and secrecy, infiltration, not invasion, guerrillas at night, not armies by day, through intimidation and not free choice. Doesn't that sound like COVID? Intimidation instead of free choice? What's a mandate? It's an ultimatum. How can you get away with that? Well, if you're under maritime law, martial law, admiralty law, then ultimatum, mandate, that's standard operating procedure under maritime law. That's kind of a hint, people, that you don't live in the law of the land. You don't live in a constitutional law society. Because if you did, then people would have free choice. And you wouldn't listen to college dropouts like Bill Gates talk to you about mandatory vaccines. What would he know? He's an imbecile. He's a complete imbecile. He can't even graduate from Harvard, which I'm telling you, it's not that hard to graduate from Harvard. It's difficult to be admitted. When you get your admissions letter from Harvard University, it's 5 times larger than most universities' graduation diploma is. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You remember when the Wizard of Oz was handing out the heart and gave the scarecrow a diploma from a university? That looked like a Harvard diploma admission letter, because they're so arrogant. They assume that you're going to attend classes and that they're going to pass you and you're going to get a 4-year degree from Harvard if they accept you at Harvard. Never mind that you might be accepted at other universities, right? They just assume that you will turn everyone else down. That's how arrogant and smug they are. I mean, how many people actually turn down admission to Harvard if they were granted that? A few, very few. That's what you're dealing with here, people. That's an indoctrination cult. All of these things, they're all military structured, and they're all obedience, secrecy, and world mission arrogant focus. Because these people haven't got a clue what the world mission is. They have a clue of being obedient and doing what they're told, or else they won't have a Japanese gardener and they won't have a Ferrari, or if your name is Paul Pelosi, you won't have a 911 Carrera to go torpedo Jesus Lopez on Highway 29 and nearly kill him at 10:15 at night, drunk, falling down drunk in Oakville, Napa County. And that's the second time that Paul Pelosi did that we know of. He's perhaps done it more than that. Paul Pelosi torpedoed his older brother David, who did die. Yeah, Paul Pelosi, and I'll be real specific, on February 22nd, 1956, a young Paul Pelosi, age 16, attending St. Ignatius High School in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, he picked up his older brother and they went down to Skyline Boulevard near the Crystal Springs Reservoir, and he flipped his sports car, I don't know what kind he was driving, flipped it upside down and killed his brother on Skyline Boulevard, which is a very curvaceous and dangerous road during the daytime. It's also known as Highway 35. Highway 35, it runs north-south. Crystal Springs Reservoir is also home to an academy where Patricia Hearst went to school, and other children of spooks or bankers. They go to that school. They also go to the Academy of Sacred Heart Order in Atherton and the Academy of Sacred Heart Order in Pacific Heights, San Francisco, or to the Dominican Academy in Spooksville, Monterey, near the Department of Defense Language Warfare Center, which often goes by the Applied Linguistics Center, which I call the Sophistry Center, how to lie to people in different languages. Liar, liar, pants on fire policies. So Peter Schiff, he started Euro-Pacific Capital in 1996 somewhere in Southern California. And that would have made Peter Schiff 33 years old. That's what I said, 33 years old. The exact same age that Erin Valente was when she visited a managing director of a subsidiary entity of KKR, the world's premier private banker for all things corporations on this planet Earth, with offices all around the world. Erin Valente was murder-suicided and manic episode done away with on October 7th, 2019 at age 33. If Peter Schiff can remember back when he founded Euro-Pacific Capital, he didn't get whacked. His father's name is Irwin Schiff, and Irwin Schiff was put in prison under federal law for tax evasion because he didn't want to pay his taxes because he thought it was unconstitutional. Now, he does have a point. Nowhere in the Constitution is a mandatory income tax provided for, yet under maritime law, you can do it, right? And that's the point of the Irwin Schiff story, was that he was prosecuted by maritime law, and there's no due process. So, of course, it's a sad story, and I feel empathy for Peter Schiff that his father was imprisoned. I completely understand how difficult it is to be held hostage by the legal system. I have personal experience with that. Euro-Pacific Bank is a bank, and that was founded by Peter Schiff, supposedly in St. Vincent and the Grenadine Islands. Now, you don't really have to travel there to do that. You can do it out of Darien, Connecticut, or Greenwich, or New Haven, Connecticut, or San Francisco, or Pacific Heights, where Paul Pelosi has a couple of different homes there, because I believe he lives on Pacific Avenue, not the home that was featured with the infamous styrofoam hammer attack. You know, the hammer that didn't kill him and didn't put him in a coma for 6 months. Look at how many calamities that Paul Pelosi's had. He's in a car wreck where he's driving and is responsible for manslaughter, the death of his older brother David in 1956. Okay, then he's in a 2021 Porsche Carrera high-performance car that can go 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds and go over 200 miles per hour. And he torpedoes a hard-working 48-year-old Jesus Lopez on State Highway 29, nearly killing him. And that's called a misdemeanor DUI. That's a felony DUI, people. Anyone else would be charged with a felony. It's a misdemeanor parking ticket. And he's under probation for the Napa County. But he's not living in his St. Helena, Napa County residence because he doesn't want the sheriff to come visit him there. So he's living in San Francisco. And then they have this infamous, bizarre, 2 o'clock in the morning, infamous hammer attack. And he's 82 years old, and he's on probation. And he's living at 2640 Broadway, which has no view of the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge or Alcatraz or Tiburon Belvedere. Like he'd live in a home like that when he has a beautiful panoramic view on the block up the hill and down the road a little bit on Pacific Avenue near Divisadero. He has a panoramic view. But they're remodeling that house. There's 4-car garages there too. And Paul needs a lot of cars because he wrecks them. Anyway, those are 3 felony crimes that Paul Pelosi is involved with that we know of. And he moved into private banking in San Francisco at the exact time that Abigail Folger's mother was retired. She was the premier private banker of San Francisco in 1969. And that is when Paul Pelosi moved to the Haight-Ashbury area in Presidio Heights, the site of the last Zodiac murder of Paul Stein, another Paul, age 29, Paul Pelosi, age 29, Nancy Pelosi, age 29, Sharon Tate's father, Paul Tate, age 47, living right there too, living in Presidio Army Base on the other side of the wall. But it's public access. You just walk through a little pathway. You can walk from the Pelosi home to go over and have drinks with Paul Tate if he was entertaining. That's maritime law. That's maritime law because normally, 3 strikes and you're out, right? But not if you're a Pelosi. And Jesuit indoctrinated at St. Ignatius and Georgetown University. All right, so I guess my point of all this is you got to be really wary of everybody has to swim with the sharks, otherwise you won't know anything. It's like ratting people out for using performance-enhancing drugs in sports, and then everybody says, well, you must have done it too, else you wouldn't have known. Well, that's kind of true and not really true, because you actually can get pretty close in there without actually having committed the crimes yourself. But it is understandable that most people that are in the